part of what drew me to the organization 4 years ago is I think we look at ourselves as stewards for the independent channel of wealth management. And in doing so, we don't have any minimums in the firms we work with because we've got the experience, the scale, the capacity, with over 60 employees to handle some of the largest M&A deals in the space, but also handle some of the smaller ones that, need just as much help as the larger ones do in finding those perfect fits. So, Eric and James, you both personally get involved in a lot of our larger M&A transactions with our firms that might have a billion or more in AUM. Is there a difference that you're seeing right now in deal structures depending on transaction size if someone's on the higher or lower end of that spectrum?
I'll take it first because I know James and I really want to talk about this. So we'll spend the next hour or two talking about it, even after we end. My initial reaction to the question is that there are differences between large firms and smaller firms, but part of what I think we do better than anyone else in the industry is we take what we learned from large transactions, $1 billion plus transactions, of which we do a handful a year or more, and we bring that down into the smaller firms, the 100 to 250 million or anything around that range. Because there's a lot to be learned from large transactions, what they do well, how they approach the marketplace, how they manage internal operations, how they structure equity transfers, how they optimize tax strategies. So by having the visibility across the spectrum, we can take best practices from large $1 billion plus transactions and distill them down to where a more typical advisor, independent advisor is, and they get the advantage of that knowledge. So that's one thing that we try to do. We're constantly evolving our deal structures to maximize the impact for the advisors in the transaction.
Yeah, and deal structures are very nuanced. We've got a lot of arrows in the quiver here, but they're nuanced to the benefit of the parties, meaning what we are trying to do is we're trying to put in place a deal structure that works for both parties in a transaction so that they're walking away feeling they got, a good deal in terms of what the outcome of this is going to be. Again, going back to that word partnership. That's really what we are trying to create. These are long-term partnerships that, will hopefully stand the test of time. To Eric's point, some of the things that we see from our $2 to $5 billion deals that are trickling down into, sub-billion-dollar deals is the use of equity. That's typically a component of deal structures that was reserved for billion-dollar plus deals 3 or 4 years ago. We are seeing equity deployed in sub-billion-dollar deals now on a very regular cadence. And it's not only being deployed at the founder level, it's being deployed as an incentivization for, G2s in an organization that may only have, 5, 10, 15, 20%, and they can roll that equity or come up with a different structure that allows them to gain that equity participation. The reason that's important is because these G2s or advisors in the organization have strong client relationships, and you need to incentivize them to have that partner mentality. You don't want to turn a partner into an employee. You do that, it's going to be very disruptive. You've got to keep them in that partnership mentality. I mean, it's always said that as soon as someone becomes a partner, they find if they're 5 gears in their transmission, they automatically find a 6th gear because they're more committed to the growth of the organization. They're more committed to the vision that you've established. So, equity is a tool that's so powerful in terms of its deployment. You've got to be careful in its deployment because firms are realizing it's a very valuable part of their organization. And frankly, in many organizations, it's more valuable than cash. So deployment has to be strategic, but the deployment of that can be so powerful.